Good morning, Ohio State fans, and welcome back to the 11 Dubcast for Tuesday, September 2nd, coming out of the Texas-Ohio State game. And I'm joined, and although I'm certain all Buckeye fans enjoyed what happened last weekend, certainly nobody could have had a better weekend, a more enjoyable viewing experience than our own Kyle Jones, based on so many different things. Not only was he no doubt over the moon with the variety of brilliant scheming that happened courtesy of Matt Patricia on the defense, but if you'll recall, it was on this very show last week that Jones made the assertion that Caleb Downs was the best player, or at least I'm trying to remember the way that you phrased it so that you wouldn't have the lunatic fringe come after you for knocking Jeremiah Smith down. But you made the case for Caleb Downs over Jeremiah Smith as the most valuable player, I think, to Ohio State. Smith got a case of the dropsies, at least early in the game, rebounded a little bit as the game went on, but Downs certainly had more than a few impact plays in terms of run fits. I know he had one stop on the goal line stand that they had, and he also made the game-sealing tackle at the end of the game as well. So Downs certainly, I think, had a bit of a better afternoon than Smith did, even though it was kind of a quiet day, I guess, for both guys. But you also very astutely pointed out that C.J. Donaldson you thought was going to eventually overtake James Peoples, and that happened before the very first snap on offense, because Donaldson actually started the game and then vastly outsnapped James Peoples and had a better game overall in many respects. So, Jones, how are you feeling knowing that you are just unequivocally correct in your assessment of all things Ohio State football one game into the season?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said, that Jeremiah Smith would have two drops, and that's going to validate my claims. No, it was a lot of fun to watch. It was more fun to watch the second time through on the tape. These are my favorite games. This is what makes me want to do this for 11 Warriors is these kinds of games. And we saw it in the playoffs last year where it's, regardless of the outcome, I'm going to rewatch this. The Georgia game a couple years ago, I know that still hurts because of that missed field goal. I rewatched that game so many times because of this kind of stuff, the schematic chess match, the high level of play. And which is funny that this was the first game of the season. There were a lot of, clear guys that were maybe still trying to get into the rhythm of the season, right? Obviously, you had Smith with the drops. You had a number of false starts for Texas. You had some guys that, had trouble getting lined up correctly. And obviously the first game jitters for Archie Manning. But so much of that, I think, was because of what Matt Patricia and that defense did. And I think I had kind of hoped that this would be the case because I think there's a feeling that the college and the pro game schematically are very similar, and that the gap between high school to college is bigger than college to the pros. And I think this really showed that it's the opposite, that what the NFL guys do, what Matt Patricia put out there was an NFL game plan. Like, it was not sorcery that no one had ever seen before. It was an NFL defensive game plan. That's why you see guys like Dan Orlovsky who are, foaming at the mouth about this game plan because they watch NFL film every week, right? Like, this is what they see on Sunday football is you see them, hey, this is what you're going to try to do offensively. This is how you're going to try to attack me. Great. I'm going to actually attack you. We heard Jim Knowles say those things, and you hear every defensive coordinator say those things. Like, we're going to play aggressively on defense and we're going to play offense on defense. Like, Matt Patricia did that, actually. Like, what we saw last Saturday was that actually taking place. It was, I'm going to find your weakness and exploit it. I'm going to hurt it. You saw it with the way they used Arvell Reese, I think, as a spy and a pass rusher. I thought that was, that's the thing we'll talk about this week in film study. It's called an odd mirror technique, where essentially you blitz three, or you rush three guys, right? And you in a nose tackle and two ends, and your whole goal is to have those guys converge and break the pocket and force the quarterback to go out one way or the other. And then you've got somebody athletic like Arvell Reese mirroring him and spying. And that's what you see all the time when you watch Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. And like, that's how those guys get defended. Arch Manning's not going to see that. Probably any team outside of Georgia isn't going to show him that for the rest of the season. They don't have it in the bag. And suddenly Ohio State, with Matt Patricia calling these plays, they've got everything in the bag. And so the question becomes, week to week, what do they put out? And I think, that'll be the fun part, is when we see this Saturday against Grambling, are they going to put out a vanilla game plan where they just play 4-2-5 and run cover 3 and that's fine? Or do they just throw everything out there and try to destroy, any type of tendencies that opposing the future opponents can then play off of. And I think that'll be the really fun part about this season and watching this defense grow. I mean, the thing that we have to acknowledge is that Patricia's taking a polished group of toys, essentially, right? Caden McDonald has never played this much. He was awesome on Saturday. Caden Curry was great. Kenyatta Jackson absolutely stepped up until he got hurt. And you got to hope that he's going to come back. Bo Atkinson never played in a Buckeye uniform before, showed up, was all over the place. Arvell Reese, same thing. And so you've got these guys. Obviously, we'd seen Jermaine Matthews in some of the playoff run last year, and he absolutely, stole the show. I think the play he made on the pick that got overturned, the deflection that Styles, they said he trapped instead of actually holding on. That play was one of the most athletic plays you're going to see from a corner. And so Patricia came in, and actually, it's not like the cupboard was empty, even though they lost 8 starters. Like, he had plenty of tools to work with. And the fun part is he didn't go, okay, here's one way I can use that set of toys, and I'm going to stick to it. And that's what we see a lot in the college game is you get your best 11 out and you make the game fast and you let them go, make it simple. And instead he's like, no, man, I'm going to use you guys this way in this situation, and this situation is totally different in this situation. And that's the fun part. And I think all season long, we're going to see that. That's what I'm going to show on Thursday of like, here's what we saw in this game. Who knows what we're going to see as the season progresses, not just different fronts, different coverages, different coverage disguises, different blitzes. He did it all, man. And like, that's going to be fun to watch this whole season.
Yeah, one of the things I recall when Knowles was starting out here was that there was a narrative surrounding the defense that it was going to take time to implement, that they don't necessarily just exclusively run a 3-4 or a 4-3 or a 3-3-5 or anything like that. They throw pretty much everything into his defensive philosophy, and that it would take time for the players to learn all of that and be able to execute it correctly. That was something I was curious about. How quickly are the players in place going to be able to adapt to what Matt Patricia wants to do, especially if he's going to be bringing a lot of NFL concepts to this college defense? How quickly are they going to be able to adapt? Not that Knowles didn't do this himself, because I remember him doing this more than a few times last year himself, but I was particularly encouraged. My favorite thing that I saw was that they were consistently disguising the coverages on third down and collapsing the formation, lining up everybody on the line of scrimmage, and then having guys doing a variety of different things in terms of rushing, dropping back, faking like they were going to drop back, and then doing a delayed blitz, pretending to rush the passer and then dropping back into a delayed coverage. There were a lot of sophisticated things going on there, and they obviously executed it brilliantly to the point that Archie Manning was flustered in a way that a lot of people I don't think really expected. I'm curious, you're going to break it all down for us on Film Study this week, and we're all very excited to see it because this is some sophisticated stuff that Patricia did that you're going to explain to all of us commoners very eloquently. But I'm curious if you had to single out one thing that you're most excited to talk about on Thursday that Patricia did in this game, what would you say was your favorite philosophy or concept that he implemented?
I just love the way he played games with Arch in the sense that he knew what, you see with Sark's offense, and Sark runs a lot of motion. I talked about in the film study last week, he runs a lot of motion. He uses a lot of screens, a lot of RPOs, a lot of play action. And a lot of that stuff is done to expose what the defense wants to do. You put a guy in motion to see, is the corner going to travel across with that wide receiver? If he does, means they're probably playing man. If they don't, that means they're probably in zone. And what you saw was Patricia basically say, cool, I'm going to give you false reads. I know what you're looking for, and I'm going to give you the wrong answer on purpose. There was one play I remember where Igbenoson's, he's lined up outside as, covering the receiver on the right side. And they take that wide receiver and they put him in motion, but they don't motion him all the way across. They make him the number 3 receiver. And they've got 3 receivers split out to that side. The guy just coming across was the third most inside. So he's just barely off the tight end, essentially, or where a tight end would be. And so you're looking at it, and there's a tight end back on the side where the guy came from, and that's got Caleb Downs over him. And so if you look at it as Arch Manning, you go, Caleb Downs is lined up across from my tight end out left. I'm looking right. I've got 3 cornerbacks lined up directly over my 3 receivers. There's 1 safety in the middle of the field. Every coach in the world is going to go, that's man coverage. You've got man free. And what happens is when the play starts, a safety. Jade McClain bails out, and he was great, by the way. We're going to talk a lot about him. As much as I love Downs, Jade McClain played a heck of a game at the safety spot. Bails out, and then Igbinosun is playing the middle linebacker, essentially. He drops into a Tampa 2 zone like Brian Urlacher for the Bears. Caleb Downs, meanwhile, is playing cornerback and sitting in the flat. So they showed you man free and then dropped into cover 2 with guys playing different spots, right? So your star strong safety is now playing corner. Your star corner is playing middle linebacker, right? But they're covering the zone and taking that away. And that was one of the sacks that I believe that was the play that Reese actually like technically was called for a sack. Reese had a number of hits. He was able to get there. I think Arch got over the line once or twice, right? That was one of those plays where the pressure got home because Arch is just looking. He doesn't know what he's trying to see or what he's able to see. And I think those are the type of things where week in, week out, I think you're going to see Patricia go, hey, I trust my position coaches to get these guys ready. They're going to be ready to do the thing that I need them to do. And then you might say, Caleb, I need you to do this special thing. And he's that guy who can unlock that, where you can say, Caleb, I need you to do this. Or Sonny, I need you to do this. Everybody else, you're going to be comfortable. You're going to be in a position to succeed. We're going to get you ready. I've got my 2 dudes that I know I can ask to play a little bit outside of themselves. And that's going to be the fun part, is to see what all does that unlock and what are those things he does week to week to just throw off the opposing, not just quarterback, but Sark even said himself, he was like, I was thrown. Like I didn't call a good game. Like I didn't do a good job and I was not ready for that. And so, that's going to wane over time as we start to actually see the tendencies. And I think right now that was totally in Ohio State's favor to have a new play caller against an established play caller who hasn't even called a game against another team, right? Sark's last 2 games were called against Ohio State. So like Ohio State had the advantage in that sense. If they played later on in the year, obviously that flattens out that advantage. But even so, it's going to be fun to watch how this progresses. And, by late November, what do we say Ohio State's defense is and isn't? Is just going to be fun to watch.
So last question I want to ask you then along that line of thinking. I haven't been able to independently confirm he actually said this, but I did hear through the grapevine that the great football mind Johnny Manziel, I think in wake of the game, made a comment specifically about Patricia that he's like, for a guy that has had to spend so much of his career planning for the Aaron Rodgers and the Patrick Mahomeses of the football world, going from the NFL level and coming down to the college ranks and then being able to game plan against a guy like Archie Manning, who, talented as he is or may be, has not actually made a start on the road in college yet. It is something that is going to pay dividends given the amount of experience that guy has game planning against players that have much more experience and processing, just ability to process what is in front of them than someone like Archie Manning at this stage of his career. This is hardly the only inexperienced quarterback that Ohio State's going to face this year. By the time they get to the end of the season, Bryce Underwood, if he stays healthy, presumably is going to have more comfort under his belt in terms of ability to go out and execute by end of November. Drew Aller, obviously somebody that is probably going to be the toughest test Ohio State has left on their schedule at quarterback when they welcome Penn State to Columbus at the beginning of November. Do you anticipate that philosophy that Manziel was kind of speaking about relative to Patricia's ability to succeed is going to be something that continues to pay off for Ohio State's defense over the course of the season and however long he chooses to stay around Columbus? Because it feels like he might be another, the inverse of Chip Kelly in terms of, this might be a one and done deal if this guy continues to be as good as he is and he's going back to the NFL after this season.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that assessment, whether that's credit to Manziel or someone else. I think that's absolutely spot on. And it goes to the point of the gap between the NFL and college. And I'm going to say something that's going to upset a lot of people. Ohio State fans have been on the reverse end of this since Mike McDonald took the Michigan job as DC 4 years ago, whatever it was now. Time flies. But that same philosophy applies here in the sense of that, what I've heard is that the talent and the athleticism gap is not as big, correct? In the sense that a speed rusher, a Colin Simmons or Edric Houston, whoever it might be, Arvell Reese, they're as fast as the guys in the NFL. They're getting home on these quarterbacks as quickly as they do in the NFL. So when you send pressure, they're getting there as quickly as they would, whether it's the Patriots, the Bills, the Jaguars, whoever it is, right? So that speed is happening when you call that play defensively. The difference is it's not Aaron Rodgers. It's not Pat Mahomes. It's not guys that have seen hundreds, if not thousands of live reps to be able to see those disguise coverage and go, oh, wait, I see the will linebacker turning his feet and turning his back and dropping at a 45-degree angle. So that means he's actually going to the hook, which means it's cover 3, which means my tight end's going to be flashing right over here. So let me flip my hips. And guys aren't doing that at this level. They just aren't. They haven't played enough. They haven't seen this kind of thing. You're seeing that a lot this weekend with, kind of the defensive arch, on the shows like Get Up and First Take and stuff. They're saying basically like, look, man, he's going to be fine because he's not going to have to deal with this every week. So whether it's Underwood, whether it's Aller, doesn't matter if they're a true freshman, their first start, or, a Carson Beck, who, looked great the other night and, looked like a pro quarterback, very polished. Like, he's not going to be ready for this stuff. And that's because at the college level, you just don't see this level of deception. And also the other piece is going to be, it's not just as the quarterback prepared. College pass protections are so much simpler in the fact that like a team's only going to have 4 or 5 protections installed realistically. Any college team's going to only have 5, 6 tops. And this is why you see these types of things where, it's 3rd and 9, the quarterback, calls to the line to change the protection because he sees a blitz and they run play action. And that's because the best 7-man protection they have, where the tight end and the running back stay in, is a play action, because that's just the only thing they have in the book. They don't have a 7-man protection that's not a play action. So, those are the types of things that, like, when they scheme up Penn State, Matt Patricia is going to go, okay, what are the 5 protections that they have? When do they run them? And I'm going to absolutely attack them. And I'm going to know if it's the center and guard have to work together to figure out how they split the middle, or the running back's always going to help up the middle first, or he's going to help off the edge first, or the tight end always stays in on 3rd and whatever it might be. He's going to absolutely attack that and go try to pick that apart, just like he did against Archie Manning in Texas. And so I think we're going to see that all year long. And that's the advantage that Ohio State has with an NFL level mind running the defense. And again, that speaks to the infrastructure, because he doesn't have to go teach how to tackle. He doesn't have to teach, Igbenogson how to keep his hands off a guy, because he can trust Tim Walton to do that. He doesn't have to teach the defensive line how to shed blocks. He's got Larry Johnson to do that. You have these qualified level, assistant level coaches that teach at the highest level. And then you're able to just focus on truly the game planning and scheming like an NFL coordinator was or would be able to. That's a huge advantage for this defense throughout the entire season.
Well, I think I speak for all Ohio State fans when I say we are very grateful that we have that to look forward to the rest of the season, just as we will be looking forward to your film study on Thursday, Mr. Jones. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for tuning into the 11 Dubcast. And we will be back tomorrow morning with Dan Hope for the Wednesday episode. Take care, folks.